Yet again today on the floor of the House of Representatives, we had another show vote to make people feel good about themselves by passing a bill that says anti-Semitism in the title. That's what happened. And it was put on the floor by Republican leadership despite knowing that it was pulled from going through committee. We didn't have a chance to amend it. We didn't have a chance to discuss it, to debate it. We didn't have a hearing on it. As a result, today, a significant number of my Republican colleagues, including myself, voted no. We will be accused of, I don't know, being for anti-Semitic behavior, being accused by our friends and allies of not wanting to support Israel, supporting our Jewish American colleagues and friends, constituents, fellow Americans. Nothing could be further from the truth, but that's what will happen. And it'll happen because we dared to stand up and say, we don't believe in thought police. But when we want to insert the government into what you're thinking and what motivates you, you are empowering that which should never be empowered. The ability of the government to police thought, to police speech, to police your views. Not the views that carry out then the actions. The actions are the problem. Police the actions.
This is my video update on this Thursday, midday, May the 2nd. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with today's date, May the 2nd, 10 years ago today. The Banderites in Ukraine, they trapped 46 people in the Odessa House of the trade union, and they trapped those 46 people in Odessa, and they burned them alive. 46 people, May 2nd, 2014. Maybe even more than 46 people. But no one was ever held accountable for the murder of these people in Odessa. And yesterday, the U.S. House, they passed the H.R. 6090 anti-Semitism bill as they continue to send weapons to these Bandera forces. Try to make some sense out of all of this. H.R. 6090, the anti-Semitism bill, which will not make things any better. It's just going to make things a whole lot worse for everybody and for everyone. But what it does do is that it further chips away at the First Amendment, which I guess is the whole point of this 6090, H.R. 6090 bill. Anyway, let's stay with Odessa, because yesterday we had a huge Russian missile strike. A couple of Iskander missiles, they hit a warehouse in Odessa, which, from what I understand, had just received a whole bunch of ammunition and weapons from the United States via Romania. These are the reports that I have read. I can't verify this, but that's what the various reports are saying. And these weapons had just arrived into Odessa, and a couple of Iskanders blew up this warehouse, and it was a massive explosion. So the The first delivery, I guess, of the 61 billion in weapons has been quickly destroyed. Gone up in smoke. The 61 billion, or a very, very small part of the 61 billion. Ayos Yorgos, Saint George, everybody. Slaying the dragon. So yeah, that's what happened in Odessa yesterday. There's a lot of videos and photos of the explosion. It was just massive fires in Odessa from hitting this weapons warehouse, this alleged weapons warehouse. And we are now getting reports from Ukraine military officials that F-16s are indeed coming to Ukraine, most likely in the next month or two. This is according to military official, what's this guy's name? Ilya Evlash, speaking on national TV on Wednesday. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Evlash predicted that Kiev could receive the first batch of advanced jets after Orthodox Easter, which is celebrated on May 5th this year. Still, he cautioned against getting hopes up. We are not guessing the future because the date has been changed several times. That's why we are waiting, Evlash said. I believe they're going to get the F-16s very soon. I imagine with NATO pilots, that would be my guess. Now, where are they going to take off from? That's going to be an interesting one to watch. Because if there's an airfield in Ukraine, then the Russians are going to destroy it. Whatever airfield is in Ukraine, the Russians will destroy it. Now, if it's an airfield in Romania, which I guess is the most likely spot for an airfield for the F-16s, then things get interesting. We'll see. We will see. But I believe we're going to see the F-16s coming very soon, which means that we're getting closer to a collective West weapons military endgame. Because after the F-16s, there are no more wonder weapons, are there? And then the collective West will have to decide, do we send troops? Do we put boots on the ground? We're going to get to that point. Once the F-16s are destroyed and they're proven not to be the wonder weapon that everyone's been talking them up to be, we're going to get to that point where the collective West is going to have to decide, do we send troops into Ukraine? Will Macron send troops into Ukraine? So we're getting close to an end game. So the UN representative for Ukraine, the Ukrainian representative, or one of the representatives in the United Nations for Ukraine, posted on Twitter X what you're seeing on the screen right now. 2024 list of 6 main types of bridges: arch bridge, cantilever bridges, cable-style bridges, suspension bridges, tied arch bridges, and on the very bottom, the bottom right, you can see Kerch Bridge, and there's nothing there in that photo. This is a UN representative for Ukraine, hinting at the destruction of the Kerch Bridge, openly advocating, can you say he's advocating, for an attack on civilian infrastructure? Is that a stretch to say that? A representative in the United Nations. What the UN should do is they should kick this guy out. That's what the UN should do. Absolutely. This is not stuff that a UN representative should be posting on Twitter. But there you can see the obsession with the Kerch Bridge. absolutely obsessed with the Kerch Bridge. That is the final last Hail Mary shot that the collective West believes can change the trajectory of this conflict, is taking out the Kerch Bridge. I don't know why they believe this, but that's what they believe. The obsession with the Kerch Bridge. And if you can destroy the Kerch Bridge, well, then that will set off a chain reaction of events, which will eventually lead to the removal of the Putin administration, something like that. That's what they're aiming for. That's all they've got left, is the destruction of the Kerch Bridge. That's it. And you had the foreign minister of Latvia saying yesterday that a list of collective West countries, some collective West countries, they have delivered weapons to Ukraine without any restrictions to target Russian territory. That is what Latvia's foreign minister, Balba Bratse, said. Ukraine received Western weapons from some partners with permission to strike at Russian territory, according to the FM of Latvia. And Zakharova posted on social media, directed towards the foreign minister of Latvia, can we have a list of these countries that have delivered weapons to Ukraine with permission to use those weapons to hit Russian territory? Because we would all like to know which countries have delivered weapons to Ukraine so that they can be used to attack Russia. Russia would definitely like to know, because that could be considered an act of war, I guess. You could consider it an act of war. You can definitely consider it an act of war. Anyway, that is what the Latvian foreign minister said. And the Wall Street Journal, they put up an article yesterday with the title, China has crossed Biden's red line on Ukraine. The president warned Xi not to provide material support to Russia. Will there be consequences? Yeah, it's all China's fault. It's all China's doing. Russia's victory is all due to China. It's a great narrative. It's an absolutely great narrative for the collective West. So now we can place sanctions on China, right? Because they've crossed Biden's red line. Bidenopolis. Professor Biden and his red lines never, ever cross Biden's red lines. Let's see. Zlati71 summarizes this WSJ article. China has crossed Biden's red line on Ukraine. The publication believes that the PRC is now supplier number one of the military-industrial base of the Russian Federation, and this has a material effect because it has radically changed the course of the confrontation. The failure to take decisive action against China will now open the way to Russian victory in Ukraine, according to the Wall Street Journal. The reason I'm standing here is because there's shade. That's why I'm standing right here, by the way. Yeah, so there you have it. I've been saying this for a while now, haven't I? I have been saying this for a while. They are going to blame China for all of this, for the Ukraine debacle, for the Russian victory. The failure to take decisive action against China will now open the way to Russian victory in Ukraine. That's right, people of America, people of Europe. We were winning. We were winning, and then China came along. They ruined everything. Damn it, China, you ruined everything. Now we have to place sanctions on you. So let's talk about what is happening in Georgia, in Tbilisi. We had the Foreign Agents Law, the second vote for the Foreign Agents Law, and it passed Parliament. So it's got one more vote to go. And I believe after that vote, then the president of Georgia, I forgot her name. I think it's something like, oh boy, what's her name? Something like Beachvili or something? I don't know. Anyway, she grew up in France or something like that. And now she's president of Georgia. And she was born and raised in France or something like that. Now she's president of Georgia. Anyway, she's going to most likely veto the law because she's super duper uber pro-West. And then the law is going to be passed by the parliament or by the government, and that's it. So it has one more process, one more step to go. But yesterday was a big step towards getting this foreign agents law in place in Georgia, and boy, did protests break out. Violent protests as people poured onto the street. They stormed the parliament building in Georgia, and things got crazy. Things got absolutely crazy. But I read this morning that everything has calmed down and the streets were being cleaned up and the protests, they ended. That's what I read this morning. But here's an article from Politico. Here's a title from Politico. Georgian Parliament backs Russia-style foreign agent law despite major protests. The rules have put the country on a collision course with the EU and its own citizens. Well, some of its citizens, Politico. And to be fair, Politico, this really isn't a Russia-style foreign agent law. This is more like a US-style foreign agent law because it pretty much mimics the United States of America FARA Act. So the correct title from Politico should be Georgian Parliament backs US-style foreign agents law despite protests. That should be the correct title from Politico. But the EU, from what I read, is now threatening Georgia. They are saying that if Georgia proceeds with this foreign agents law, then the EU might yank their candidate status, their European Union candidate status, which would be a win for Georgia, if you ask me. That's like a double win. You enact this foreign agents law, and you get one step closer to removing the toxic NGOs, right? So that's a win. And you're also removed from candidate status for the EU. That's like a double win, man. Georgia, that's great news, actually. But there's going to be a lot of citizens in Georgia who are going to be very upset with this because for some strange masochistic reason, they want to enter the EU. You know, why would you want to enter a union that's sinking? But hey, they want to enter the EU. Propaganda is very strong. And that's going to upset a lot of people. This is exactly what the European Union, by the way, did in Ukraine in 2013, 2014 with the Maidan coup, with the Obama-Biden EU-sponsored coup in Maidan. They actually told the Yanukovych government, well, the story goes that the Yanukovych government was told by Putin, look, you can enter the Eurasian Economic Union, which benefits Ukraine and benefited Ukraine because everything in Ukraine's entire industry was oriented towards Russia. All the trade was going in the direction of Russia. And so Putin said, yes, you can enter the Eurasian Union, but you can also enter the EU. We have no problem. That is what Putin told Yanukovych. That's what he told Ukraine. We have no problem. You can enter both. That's fine for us, and that's a win-win for you, Ukraine. You get to enter both unions, but it was the EU. Get this, it was the European Union that told Ukraine, no, it's either us or it's Russia. You can't have both. So they're kind of pulling the same playbook with Georgia. They're saying if you don't shoot down this foreign agents law, then we're going to yank EU candidate status. And they do this so that they can really anger more people and create more violent protests so that chaos ensues and they can get a regime change in the Georgian government or something like that. The EU is always pulling these types of tricks in order to stir up trouble. Georgia, the country that that is protesting, or part of the country that its citizens are protesting for less transparency. People are out in the streets in Georgia calling for more dark money. Up is down, left is right, everything's upside down. People are violently protesting so that they can have more dark money entering the country. We don't want to know where any of the money to NGOs is coming from. We prefer it to be hidden. It's better. Less sunlight, less transparency is always better. If you're some of the people in Georgia. Oh, man. Anyway, Bloomberg had an article with the title, U.S. and Saudis Near Defense Pact Aimed at Reshaping Middle East. Plan would offer incentives for Israel to end war with Hamas. Agreement paves way for Saudis to get advanced weapons. So there's been a lot of talk about the U.S. coming close to some sort of an agreement with Saudi Arabia. Even Blinken, when he was at the Klaus Schwab WEF forum in Riyadh, before Blinken started to chow down on them bugs, before he started to eat the bugs, Blinken hinted at the fact that Saudi Arabia and Israel are very close to normalizing relations, and the U.S. is very close to a big deal with Saudi Arabia. And now we have this article from Bloomberg. I don't know if I believe this. I've read statements coming from Saudi Arabia refuting these claims and saying that Saudi Arabia is not going to enter into any deal until the situation in Palestine is resolved. But who knows? Who knows what is going on? But according to Bloomberg, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia and Israel, they're very close to some sort of big, grand bargain. Lord Bibo is summing up this article from Bloomberg. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia are close to a defense pact. U.S. will military commit to Riyadh's security. The U.S. will provide access to previously off-limit weapons. Saudis will limit Chinese tech in the kingdom. A U.S.-led civilian nuclear program will be started, and the Saudis will recognize Israel if Netanyahu stops the war and commits to a Palestinian state. That last part's never going to happen, at least not with Netanyahu in charge. But the real sweetener for Saudi Arabia in this deal, which I do believe, because me and Alexander actually did a video on this on the Duran about 6 months ago. I believe we first reported on this story. So I believe this part of the reporting from Bloomberg, which is the nuclear program part. Saudi Arabia has been pushing hard to get nukes, to get some sort of nuclear program started, which is really nukes. That's what they're talking about here. Saudi Arabia getting nuclear weapons. That's what we're talking about here. And we talked about this 6 months ago on the Duran, and Bloomberg is bringing it up again. And I think that's the real sweetener. That's what could get Saudi Arabia to agree to this grand bargain, is the United States saying, okay, we'll start providing you with nuclear technology. And they'll say it's a civilian nuclear program or stuff like that, high-tech weapons, and a civilian nuclear program. But no, that's not what this is about. This is about nukes to Saudi Arabia, which would be a huge game changer for the entire region. So we'll see. We will see what will happen here, but this is big news. This is big news, and this is a very important story to follow. So let's do a couple of more news stories. and then we'll get to some clown worlds. Well, let's do one quick story, which is Colombia breaking off relations with Israel. That was announced yesterday in front of a huge crowd. The president of Colombia said that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, Colombia is going to break off all relations with Israel, which, okay, I mean, it doesn't really affect Israel much, or it doesn't affect Israel at all, to be honest. It's more symbolic, but still a story worth reporting. Let's do some clown worlds now. We have the NATO Weapons Trophy Day that is in full swing in Moscow, and it's a huge hit. Thousands of people are going to this park, to this area where you have all the NATO weapons, including Abrams tanks and an Abrams tank. You have the Leopard tank, and all other kinds of NATO weapons. And there's a sign as you enter this park. I'm not sure if this is true, but if this is real, if this sign is not some sort of AI or something, if this is a real sign, then it's a pretty smart troll on the part of the city of Moscow. This sign, as you enter this park, actually says that ambassadors from NATO countries are allowed to cut the line to get in front of the queue, which is pretty funny, I have to admit. Pretty clever. It is a pretty clever sign if this sign is real. I think it is. I think this is a real sign, but who knows? Who knows? But it does say, if you are an employee of the embassies of the US, UK, Germany, France, and Poland, access to inspection of the trophy equipment of NATO countries is provided out of queue, so you don't have to wait in line. No waiting in line. Oh man, that's pretty funny. Pretty clever. Which way do I want to go? Let's go this way. So this is not a clown world, but how about this story from the Seattle Times? Whistleblower Josh Dean of Boeing supplier Spirit Aerosystems has died. Nothing to see here with regards to Boeing, huh? Nothing to see here. And finally, let's do one more story, which is, as we are here at Taco Bell, make a run for the border at Taco Bell. Let's do one more story and we'll wrap it up. The Ukraine Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have introduced a spokes AI, I guess, is what you would call it. You can't really say a spokesman or a spokeswoman. It's a spokes artificial intelligence thing. And that's it. They are breaking ground. They are the first country to introduce a foreign affairs artificial intelligence spokesperson, being, digital creation. Yeah. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X, and go to the Duran shop. Pick up some limited edition merch. The link is in the description box down below. Subscribe to this channel if you want. That would be cool to get to 200,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the year. Take care.